Number 10. Iron Ghost. Iron Ghost was a member of the Black Legion in Age of Apocalypse. He's a fusion of Iron Man and Ghost Rider, and let's be real, he looks really fierce. Wearing the armor of Iron Man and wielding the chains of Ghost Rider, he fights alongside the rest of the Black Legion, including Orange Hulk, Amphibian, and Demon Hawk. This is actually a really sick team. It's kind of a blast seeing them in action, and Iron Ghost, although kinda crappily named, is pretty damn cool. Number 9. Hell Driver. Hell Driver is basically Ghost Rider meets Dukes of Hazzard, and he's pretty awesome. When he was introduced, we saw him chasing after 2 vampires who had kidnapped 2 people and were disguised as a sheriff and deputy. With the help of Devil Rig, the trucker Ghost Rider, Hell Driver tried to chase the villains down. Hell Driver was a short-lived creation that we didn't get much of a chance to learn about, but he drove a muscle car, which was so sick I couldn't not include him on this list. Number 8. Ghost Rider Man. In Secret Wars 2, TOO, Issue 1, we were introduced to the ridiculous Earth 617. Here, Spider-Man's Uncle Ben killed Glider Man's Uncle Glenn to get his money. But it turns out that's okay because Uncle Glenn was going to kill Slider Man's Uncle Sven. But oh wait, turns out Uncle Sven lost control of a steamroller and rolled over healthcare provider man's Uncle Ken. Which it turns out was okay because Albert Camus' The Outsider Man came to say that Uncle Ken was about to kill his Uncle Den. A bunch of other men showed up, including Large Hadron Super Collider Man, Ringbinder Divider Man, and Zack Snyder Man. But the one we're concerned with right now is Ghost Rider Man, who comes in and just says, "I'm Ghost Rider Man, vengeance!" Ghost Rider Man was a super small part of the comic. This is just an excuse to plug Secret Wars 2 because it's awesome, so go read it. Number 7. Molech. Soon after Johnny Blaze was defeated by Daniel Ketch, Molech came to ask for his assistance in finding the remaining Ghost Riders before their powers could be taken by Ketch. This Middle Eastern Ghost Rider was quite skilled with a sword and was an influential part of the Zadkiel story arc. While he was eventually killed by Ketch, his spirit went on to defend heaven and eventually helped to defeat Zadkiel. Molech's often overlooked, but he was a rather important part of the comics, having convinced Blaze to keep fighting the good fight. Number 6. Nima, last name unspecified. Nima was a Tibetan Ghost Rider, modeled after a deity from Tibetan Buddhism. Known to his people as Krog Thung, he defended the innocent and punished the wicked using his powers, including his version of the penance stare called the Stare of 1,000 Buddhas. The coolest thing about Nima is that he rode a flaming horse, which is absolutely the coolest way for a Ghost Rider to get around. So sick. Number 5. Shoba Mirza. Okay, scrap that, a flaming elephant is way cooler. Shoba Mirza was a version of Ghost Rider that presumably came from India based on the name and the fact that she rides a freaking elephant. Shoba was an important part of the comics because she, in a way, introduced Daniel Ketch to the idea that there were other spirits of vengeance out there. She initially sought him out looking for help, but when she realized that he had descended into drunkenness, she ended up actually saving him. When she was mortally wounded, she got Ketch to absorb her powers into himself, which freed her from her torment. Did I mention that she rides a flaming elephant and that she has 4 arms? Seriously awesome. Number 4. Goose Rider. Yep, gotta have the Larval Earth version. This Ghost Rider of Earth 8311 is one of the famous anthropomorphic heroes that we've seen in other alternative lists, and he's pretty ridiculous looking. His exploits are rather strange, getting angry when kids use his bike to roast marshmallows and killing the villain Chainsaw by dropping an anvil on him. He was later transported into the Secret Furs by the bee yonder. Yeah, Secret Furs is supposed to be the animal version of Secret Wars. Weak. Number 3. Kenshiro Cochran. Kenshiro Cochran, or Ghost Rider 2099. Kenshiro Zero Cochran was a hacker who was facing death for stealing information from the D-Monix Corporation. But before he was killed, he downloaded his mind to cyberspace. Here it was found by artificial intelligences called the Ghostworks, who asked Zero to be their champion in the real world. So he was downloaded into a powerful robot body with a number of abilities like super strength and durability. His hands could also transform, allowing him to create a chainsaw that shoots energy and a claw that can slice on a subatomic level. And he had advanced stealth technologies. Riding a futuristic looking motorcycle, Ghost Rider 2099 was one of the most unique and one of the coolest versions ever. Number 2. Robbie Reyes. Robbie Reyes was a really neat Ghost Rider because his powers came from a different source. Rather than being possessed by a spirit of vengeance, he shares his body with the spirit of a Satan-worshipping serial killer named Eli Morrow. He does have many of the same abilities, creating fire, fighting with chains, and banishing dudes to hell, but he rides a frickin' 69 Dodge charger called the Hell Charger, and it's awesome. Of course it is. Robbie Reyes has been a pretty great Ghost Rider and really shone in the Ghost Racer series. Definitely suggest reading those, they're pretty good. Number 1. Daniel Ketch. Daniel Ketch is probably the most influential version of Ghost Rider other than Johnny Blaze himself. Ketch became Ghost Rider as a teenager and took to the streets as a Ghost Rider, even fighting with Hulk, Spider-Man, and Wolverine in the new Fantastic Four. He was pursued for a time by Johnny Blaze, thinking he was the spirit of Zarathos. Blaze soon learned that this wasn't the case. He later went on a crusade in the name of Zadkiel, the Mad Angel, thinking that he was taking the powers of other riders to prevent their corruption. In reality, Zadkiel was using him in hopes of using the powers to wage war on heaven, something that Ketch learned the hard way. He did redeem himself though, turning around and joining the other spirits of vengeance to defeat Zadkiel before he could do too much damage. Ketch was a sick Ghost Rider who has been a very popular version since he was first introduced.
Starting off our list with something that may be a bit more on the common knowledge side for some of you guys, in at number 10 is he's incredibly strong. Now this is pretty much a given, but it's not the fact that he's got superhuman strength that's the surprise. It's how far that superhuman strength can take him. When in his Ghost Rider form, Johnny Blaze can press approximately 25 tons, which equates to 50,000 pounds. And in World War Hulk, he's known to lift even more than that, with Doctor Strange commenting that the character is capable of godlike feats, but its human host, in this case Johnny Blaze, prevents it from reaching its infinite power. And at number 9 is conjure a Hell Cycle. While the Hell Cycle is something that's pretty synonymous with the character, did you guys know that Ghost Rider Johnny Blaze can actually conjure one whenever he wants? Initially, Blaze's motorcycle would catch fire whenever he was in his Ghost Rider form, but later on it was revealed that he could just conjure a bike instead. Created from Hellfire, Johnny was able to craft a whole motorcycle from the tip of his finger. And at number 8 is he's immortal. Whoever is the host for the Spirit of Vengeance is immortal, and because of this, doesn't age. The Spirit of Vengeance is a celestial entity, so it itself cannot die, and when in Ghost Rider form, those who are its host are immortal too. But the host can die, as we've seen with host Danny Ketch when he became part of the Midnight Suns, and died once by the hand of Blade, and the other by Zarathos. Forever young, but can still kick the bucket. And at number 7 is Ghost Rider's regenerative abilities. So it should come as no surprise that Ghost Rider has impressive healing and regenerative abilities. Ghost Rider's shown the ability to regenerate from nothing before. Jack-o'-lantern literally annihilated Ghost Rider's skull in the Legend of Sleepy Hollow arc, only for Ghost Rider to immediately grow back, or suck all the pieces back together. Either or, it happened. This adds to the argument that we'll be briefly touching on later with the discussion of some of Ghost Rider's other powers, the potential for matter manipulation, although we've yet to see any of the Ghost Rider hosts show the full extent of what they can manipulate. And at number 6 is control the weather. When Alejandra Jones became Ghost Rider, she had a few different tricks up her sleeve from what we had seen her male predecessors do, one of which was the ability to manipulate the weather. She's been known to create skull-shaped clouds, and pull some very Storm-like shenanigans by summoning lightning to use as a weapon. We've yet to see the full potential of this trick, so who knows what other kinds of weather-related activities the character is capable of. Up next at number 5 is size shift. In Uncanny Avengers Annual number 1 from 2014, it's revealed Ghost Rider has the ability to shift their size. When battling Thor, he increases in his size, and shoots hellfire out of his mouth, giving the Asgardian a run for his money. We've also seen this trick when Alejandra Jones took on Mephisto, and many fans think that whoever is helming the Ghost Rider alias is capable of using hellfire to manipulate matter, which includes other physical transformations we may have yet to see. But hey, they can also conjure a hell cycle out of hellfire. And at number 4 is his sixth sense. While it may be a little hard to conceive the idea that a character can have more than 5 senses, looking at you Mr. 9 Senses Martian Manhunter, Ghost Rider has an additional sense that's quite fitting of his character. He can sense sin. Similar to how a hunting dog can track an animal based off of their scent, Ghost Rider can track people based off of their sins. It's an ethereal enhanced extrasensory perception that lets him feel sin, in which he can see, smell, or simply just feel it. Up next, number 3 is clones. Once upon a time, Danny Ketch decided to wage a war against the spirits of vengeance, and in order to do so, he created Hellfire clones of himself. They would absorb the spirits after their hosts were dead, which made the clones even stronger. The trick does end up backfiring on Danny though, who is unable to fully control the massive amount of power he's unleashed, but it still earns him some pretty massive street cred in the process. In our number 2 spot is Ghost Rider can summon a plague of locusts. Associated with all things hellish and sinful on Earth, it makes perfect sense that Ghost Rider is capable of summoning terrors of biblical proportions, like locusts. We get to experience this fun little ability when Alejandra Jones becomes the next Ghost Rider, after Johnny Blaze decided to give up the curse, and she was chosen specifically by Adam to take up the mantle. The locusts shoot out of her mouth, and as she puts it, she's justice in its most ancient form. How fitting. But locusts, And finally, in at number 1, Ghost Rider can set your eyeballs on fire. You guys have heard the saying, if looks could kill, right? Well, with Ghost Rider, that cliche gets the literal treatment. By making eye contact with someone, Ghost Rider can set their eyes on fire, unleashing a feeling of the torment of a billion extinguished souls and the pain of eternal guilt. This can cause his victims to go blind or potentially spontaneously combust. Yeah, ouch. Otherwise known as his penance stare, it's been effective on characters like Galactus in the past. And as you can see in this animation, it's pretty terrifying.
Feel the torment of a billion extinguished souls. Experience the pain of eternal guilt.
And at number 10, an amalgamation. One may initially think that the Cosmic Ghost Rider is simply just an alternate version of Johnny Blaze or Danny Ketch, the most popular characters to have taken on the Ghost Rider mantle. In actuality though, the man behind the Burning Skull is Frank Castle, the Punisher. Now his life up until the event that turned him into the Cosmic Ghost Rider is seemingly the same as Frank Castle of Earth 616, but his origin story is a mix between the Punishers and the Ghost Rider mythos, as we'll learn in our next number. And at 9, his origin. The Rider's origin story was revealed to us several issues after his first appearance in Thanos Volume 2, Issue 16. We find out that during Earth's last stand against Thanos, Frank Castle, as the Punisher, was involved in the battle, but was knocked out by the debris of a building that the Hulk was thrown into. Castle died, and his soul went to hell. That's when he encountered Mephisto. Unwilling to let go of his grudge against Thanos for slaughtering everyone on Earth, he made a deal with Mephisto, which turned him into Ghost Rider, and subsequently sent him back to Earth. But by the time that he returned, it was too late. Everything on the planet was abolished, and Thanos was long gone. Now, as the Ghost Rider, Castle would spend years and years roaming Earth, a planet filled with death and decay, as an immortal. It was a lonely existence. Even Mephisto himself began to ignore him. Castle started to go insane because of it. And at 8, Galactus. Luckily for Castle, he wouldn't be alone for much longer. Unannounced one day, Galactus arrived on Earth, badly injured from fighting Thanos, looking to recruit the help of anyone still left alive. He had no idea that Thanos had already eliminated all life on Earth though, so when he ran into only Castle, he was surprised. But Frank took this as an opportunity. The Ghost Rider offered to give Galactus the planet in exchange for his help to take down Thanos. Galactus accepted and made Ghost Rider his new herald, endowing him with the power cosmic to transform him into the Cosmic Ghost Rider. The two would then set out on a journey over the next several centuries to prevent Thanos from achieving his goal of annihilating every living being in the universe. Up next, number 7, the return of Thanos. Thanos would eventually catch up to them though, putting their crusade to an end by killing Galactus. He beheaded the Great Devourer, and seeing the abilities that Castle had as the Cosmic Ghost Rider, offered him the chance to be his herald of sorts. It was an offer to see more evil than he had ever imagined in his lifetime, and to punish it. At a loss, Castle agreed and became one of Thanos' servants. Moving on to number 6, Baby Thanos. Turns out besmirching evil wasn't the only thing that ended up being on Castle's agenda. Thanos had a plan, and needed him in order to execute it. Thanos, now going by the name of King Thanos, of course, made Castle use the Time Stone in order to drag a younger version of the Mad Titan into the future. King Thanos believed that by having the help of a younger version of himself, he could impress Lady Death and finally win her love by killing one of the most difficult and powerful individuals left in the universe, the Fallen One, who was once known as the Silver Surfer and had served as Galactus' herald long before the Cosmic Ghost Rider did. But turns out Thanos wasn't filling Castle in on the full plan. He didn't actually need his younger self in order to defeat the Fallen One. Instead, King Thanos planned on killing his younger self in order to impress Death and ensure that he would be with her forever. Talk about masochistic. This plan would be interrupted by the Fallen One, but more on that later. In at 5, the Hell Cycle. The Hell Cycle is the product of the Spirit of Vengeance, the power that Castle was given when he became Ghost Rider. But after he was endowed with the power cosmic as Galactus' new herald, his Hell Cycle got a bit of an upgrade. Think of it kind of like Silver Surfer's surfboard, except, well, a motorcycle, obviously. In addition to his now cosmic Hell Cycle, Castle's firearms and chains also got an upgrade when he went cosmic too. They're forged from the bones of Sidorak, and are pretty much indestructible. Not even Thanos could break them, as seen in Thanos issue 13 volume 2. Moving on to number 4, his powers. The Cosmic Ghost Rider's powers are made up of 2 main abilities: the Spirit of Vengeance, a power that Ghost Rider fans should be no stranger to, and the power Cosmic, something that those familiar with the Silver Surfer or Galactus definitely know a thing or two about. Now the Spirit of Vengeance, which was granted to Castle after he made his deal with Mephisto, allows him to have superhuman strength and durability, and of course to manipulate and project hellfire, which also extends to infusing objects with it, like his Hell Cycle. The Rider has also depicted the ability to unleash omnidirectional hellfire blasts that can incinerate pretty much everything around him. Castle also inherited the Penance Stare ability from the Spirit of Vengeance, Titans, which is an ability that can incapacitate victims in close combat when locking eyes with them. It induces self-mortification that exposes the victim to every negative action, behavior, feeling, and sensation, aka sins of the past, that they've committed, an ability that can only be used to avenge the innocent. Now fun fact, the Punisher in his regular form is immune to the penance stare, since he has no guilt for the murders that he's committed. Moving on to the power cosmic though. Endowed with the power cosmic, like all of the other heralds of Galactus in the past, it allowed Castle to travel interstellar distances, project energy, and infuse his penance stare with the power cosmic that allows him to incinerate any sinner that he comes across. Intense, isn't it? There's a whole lot else that the power cosmic can do too, but those additional details were never fully depicted in the series that the Rider appeared in. Now, what about his weaknesses? Well, that brings us to our next number. Up next at 3, his death. The Rider met his untimely end when the Fallen One, the Earth TRN 666 version of Silver Surfer, used Mjolnir to smash Rider to bits, while King Thanos was trying to execute his plan and, well, his younger self too. Now for context, this Norrin Rad was hunted down by Thanos when he was Galactus' herald. During one encounter, Surfer had teleported Galactus to safety, and somehow managed to evade Thanos himself. But Galactus believed him to be dead, and centuries later Surfer witnessed Galactus' death via the Mad Titan. So in order to take on Thanos, he decided to make himself worthy of carrying Mjolnir, spending a millennia doing so. He would become jet black thanks to being imbued with black matter. He too would die the same issue as the Rider, and at the hands of the Twin Titans, aka King Thanos and his younger Thanos self. Now unlike the Fallen One though, this wasn't the end of the Rider, which brings us to number 2, Valhalla. Here's where things get interesting yet again. After he's killed by the Fallen One, Frank was retrieved from his now dead timeline by an Odin of another reality, and rewarded with Valhalla, as seen in Thanos Annual Volume 2, Issue 1. But as you can imagine, Valhalla didn't really bode well with Castle. Odin saw this and decided to return his powers to him, along with sending him back to whatever time and place that he desired. So what does Frank decide to do? Well, he gets Odin to send him back to the day that Thanos was born, with the intention of killing the Mad Titan in order to prevent him from growing up and causing all of the destruction that his future self would bring upon the universe. Frank arrives to that time period, finds the baby version of Thanos, and uses his penance stare on the child, only to discover something very interesting. Thanos, at this point, was not evil. And that brings us to our final number. In at 1, he raised the Mad Titan. Now upon discovering that the baby Thanos didn't have any evil within him, Castle had a change of heart, and decided to change his plans too. Enter Cosmic Ghost Rider Issue 1, released in the later half of 2018. Cosmic Ghost Rider decides to take this young Thanos under his wing, so to speak, in hopes of changing his future. Knowing what is going to happen next in this timeline, Castle goes to see Galactus, and tries to convince him to aid him. Galactus refuses though, after looking through Frank's memories and seeing his past and all the events that occurred. So Frank, pissed off at Galactus, decides that he'll just raise Thanos on his own, which alters the timeline in a drastic way. The Guardians of the Galaxy try to prevent this, but Frank ends up killing them alongside baby Thanos. That's when he's greeted by future Thanos, who has now become the Punisher himself, and promises his father figure that there's still a place for him as his herald. Eventually by issue 5, this future Punisher Thanos meets his untimely end by Frank's hand. And what happens to baby Thanos? Well, Frank returns him to his original place in the timeline. When the child asks him, "Then won't this timeline die?" Frank responds, yeah it will, but at least they'll die with hope.
Number 10, Speed Demon. Coming at us from the Amalgam Universe, a parallel universe that is composed of mashups of some of our favorite Marvel and DC characters that was unfortunately destroyed thanks to the cross-multiveral conflict, comes Blaze Allen, a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Once a stunt rider working at a carnival, Blaze Allen becomes the Speed Demon following the death of his wife at the hands of the evil Night Spectre. He was convinced by Merlin to bond with the demon known as Etrigan, and from there the entity known as Speed Demon was born. Granted the abilities of Ghost Rider, including his fiery powers as well as super strength, Speed Demon is not actually all that fast despite what his name would suggest. While the character is a formidable fighter and an all-around powerful being, he falls very short in the speed department, especially compared to any other speedster out there. There have been other characters who have taken up this mantle, including both Jay Garrick and Wallace West. However, all of their abilities seem to be similar to the originals. Check out Blaze Allen for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1996's Speed Demon, number 1. Number 9, Kushala. Hailing from the main continuity Earth of 616 in the mid-1800s, Kushala was an Apache woman possessed by the spirit of vengeance known as the Demon Rider. To add a whole other layer of powers and depth to her character, she was also the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth at the time, making her ridiculously strong because not only was she capable of the demonic transformation and pyrokinesis that's normally associated with Ghost Rider, she could also fly and practice various types of magic, including Norse, Chaos, and Earth magic. Instead of the motorcycle or motorized vehicle that the modern Ghost Riders have, she possessed a phantom horse engulfed engulfed completely in fire. Before becoming the Spirit of Vengeance, her tribe was attacked by the US Army and her parents were unfortunately killed, so in an act of revenge she prayed for help, but instead of receiving any help from the creator, she was instead possessed by the Spirit of Vengeance. While searching for a cure to rid her of this demon, Kushala was recruited by Merlin himself with the promise of exercising the Spirit of Vengeance if she helped him with something, which led to her involvement in the War of the Realm. Check her out for yourself in 2016's Doctor Strange and the Sorcerer Supreme. Number 8. Nima. This iteration of Ghost Rider, also known as the Wrath of Heavens, the Blood Drinker, or He Who Seeks Vengeance in Our Name, isn't modeled after the normal Spirit of Vengeance that we're used to. It's modeled after a wrathful deity of the Tibetan Buddhism, and its design and methods very much reflect that. The full abilities of Nima haven't really been revealed, but it can be assumed that he possesses all the powers given to every Spirit of Vengeance. However, he possesses a penance ability fashioned by his beliefs. Known as the Stare of 1,000 Buddhas, this specific penance stare is highly potent and enables him to punish those who have wronged the innocent by forcing them to feel the pain of their victims. Nima was able to attack and destroy 2 Chinese military posts, but before actually attacking them, he offered them the chance to escape before they would face his wrath. Unfortunately for Nima though, he was found by Daniel Ketch, a former Spirit of Vengeance, and his powers were absorbed by Zadkiel before Johnny Blaze was able to find and protect him. Check out Nima in 2008's Ghost Rider Volume 6, number 28. Number 7. Shobha Mirza. Needing the power of the Spirit of Vengeance more than anything, she sought out Danny Ketch because she heard that he was the greatest of all time, which was a little bit hard for her to believe at first because of his very drunken state. Little did she know that Daniel had the Ghost Rider entity exorcised from his body completely by his friend Mary LeBau, so he wasn't really going to be any help to her. Not long after Daniel witnessed Shobha's transformation into Ghost Rider with a bit of a fun twist on it, as she rode what looks to be like a fiery elephant instead of a motorcycle, and she had 4 arms which allowed her to wield a spear, a bow, and a sword all at the same time. Shobha was eventually taken prisoner by Verminous Rex and Zadkiel, and although Daniel searched for her night after night, he couldn't find her. Somehow, she's actually the one who found him. Wounded beyond repair, the entity inside her threatened to take control, and Shobha begged Daniel to rescue her. He wasn't sure what to do, but like a parasite, Ketch just leached her powers into himself. Shobha's human half had been saved, and she thanked Daniel even as she passed away in his arms. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 2008's Ghost Rider Danny Ketch, number 1 all the way to number 4. Number 6. Ghost Rider 1 million BC. You could probably guess it from the name, but this iteration of Ghost Rider was around way before Johnny Blaze or any of the other hosts that we all know very well because they were active during 1 million BC. Very early on, he realized he was much smarter than the rest of his caveman pack, a fact that he ended up keeping to himself because he didn't want them to know that. One day, a Wendigo in disguise took over his tribe and eventually ate everyone except for the boy. Instead, Wendigo gave him the name Ghost and gave him the task of finding him again one day. Ghost set out on his quest but quickly realized he might be a little bit in over his head as the harsh environments were taking a toll on him. However, he was then approached by a snake who tempted him into saying his real name to achieve his goal, and from that point on he was bonded with a Spirit of Vengeance and rode a mammoth imbued with hellfire. 5 years later, Ghost finally tracked down the Wendigo to exact his revenge and engaged him in an intense fight that ended with the Wendigo pushing Ghost's mammoth off a cliff with him, though the Wendigo claimed that he would survive the fall. The rider was then approached by Odin and Lady Phoenix, who asked him to join the prehistoric Avengers, and together they defeated the Fallen and sealed it in an underground chamber in what would become the modern day country of South Africa. Check out Ghost for yourself, starting with 2017's Marvel Legacy, number 1. Number 5. Noble Kale. The first official Ghost Rider, Noble Kale was alive in the 18th century and grew up with an abusive pastor father that was eventually revealed to be a minion of the Dark Lord Mephisto. After secretly marrying and having a kid with a woman by the name of Magdalena, Pastor Kale's secret was found out by her and he accused her of witchcraft and had her burned at the stake. Just before she died though, she used a curse to summon demons called Furies with the sole purpose of avenging wronged women, and they started killing the townspeople. Fearing for his life, Pastor Kale struck a deal with Mephisto. He would be kept safe and Mephisto got Noble's soul. Mephisto realized that Noble was attached to a piece of the Medallion of Power, and he activated that piece to transform Noble into the original Spirit of Vengeance, and with that power he was able to take down the Furies. Pastor Kale for some reason then made an offering to the Ghost Rider in the form of Noble's son. However, Noble as Ghost Rider didn't want to accept that at all and killed himself instead. Mephisto later appeared to claim Noble's soul, and then his brother Archangel Uriel appeared and said that Noble's soul should be spared. Now, like most sibling arguments, an agreement was impossible, so they compromised and decided that his soul would remain in the void until it was rebonded with certain members of his family. Check the story out for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1990's Ghost Rider Volume 3, number 1. Number 4. Barbara Ketch. Finally, a Ghost Rider on our list today not from Earth 616. Hailing from Earth 11,993, Barbara Ketch was the sister of Daniel Ketch, who became the Ghost Rider of their world after her brother was killed. Now, it's not really stated, but it's assumed that she shares the same powers that her brother's 616 counterpart had, but for some reason never used her penance stare because she straight up just preferred killing. Surprisingly, she was able to suppress the Spirit of Vengeance's influence through sheer willpower alone, but she still went on a killing spree anyways, taking out her brother's killer and any other villains that she came across. It took the combined power of Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, and Johnny Blaze to stop her reign of terror, and they did so by separating her body from the demon. As soon as she was back to her normal self, she regretted her actions so much. However, she didn't get the chance to make up for her sins because she died shortly after. Check out her one-off appearance for yourself in 1993's What If Volume 2, number 45. Number 3. Ghost Rider 2099. Kenshiro Zero Cochran, hailing from Earth 928, is the next on our list today, and for good reason. Zero in the 2099 Marvel timeline is a cybernetic take on the Spirit of Vengeance as opposed to the supernatural being we might be used to. Originally, he was a hacker for the street gang known as Hotwire Martyrs, and one day they were attacked by the rival gang, the Artificial Kids, with a Z, and most of the martyrs were taken out. In a last-ditch effort to escape them, Zero did his best to screw them over by transferring the encrypted file to his girlfriend, and then jacking directly into cyberspace in an attempt to burn out his headwear implants. He woke up in a very surreal cyberspace inhabited by incredible machinery known as the Ghostworks, and they enlisted Zero as an agent of change. Before hitting the streets, Zero used the robot's holographic capabilities to wreath his skull-like head in artificial flame as an homage to his fallen comrades. That also served to make him look very similar to Ghost Riders of the previous century. Since he's not an actual Spirit of Vengeance, he doesn't have the powers you would normally associate with Ghost Riders. However, that doesn't mean he's not a formidable foe. While still driving the classic motorcycle, Zero used holographic camouflage, nanite regenerative abilities, eye-mounted lasers, and more to take down his enemies and get revenge for his fallen comrades. Check out this story for yourself, starting with 1994's Ghost Rider 2099, number 1. Number 2. Caleb. Okay, back to Earth 616 for now, folks. 2 years after the Civil War was over, a former captive named Caleb stumbled upon and took in a wounded soldier named Travis Parham, and nursed him back to health. One day, Parham discovered a cave that held a collection of glowing skulls. Upon touching the skulls, Parham saw a vision of a hellish nether realm populated by a creature with a burning skull for a head. Caleb told Parham that the creature he saw came from his ancestors' country and could be called upon when something needed to be made right, an instrument of vengeance, if you will. After Parham left, Caleb and his family were sadly killed by George Reagan, and Parham swore to return years later to get revenge. What he didn't know was someone was already beating him to it. This Ghost Rider killed each of Reagan's men, and finally, Reagan himself, and the killers returned after having made a deal with the demon. In a final showdown between Reagan's band and the Ghost Rider, Parham discovered that the rider was actually his former friend Caleb, powered by the Spirit of Vengeance that Travis had envisioned years ago. This Ghost Rider has all the powers you would normally associate with Ghost Rider, as well as 2 other powers. Possession, which allows him to possess and control corpses, and dimensional travel, which allows him to, travel to other dimensions at ease. Check him out for yourself in 2007's Ghost Rider Trail of Tears, number 1. And number 1, Ghost Panther. This Ghost Rider variant comes to us from the Warp World, and if you don't know what this is, let me give you a little taste. Put most simply, it is a pocket dimension of Earth 616 where history was rewritten and adapted around fused heroes such as Iron Man and Thor as Iron Hammer, Captain America and Doctor Strange as Soldier Supreme, and of course, Ghost Rider and Black Panther as Ghost Panther. The principal conduct, T'Challa, was an arrogant boy who, because of his conflict with his father, was exiled from his home country. He traveled to America where you found Jericho Simpson, a fusion of Brother Voodoo and Crash Simpson, who ended up becoming his new father figure and even gave T'Challa a new name, Johnny Blaze, and he ended up becoming a pretty successful stunt performer. Fast forward 5 years, and during a stunt, he sensed his father T'Chaka dying and got very distracted, which resulted in his own death. He was then revived by Zarathos, half-sister of Bast, and offered him powers in exchange for eating the souls of sinners. At first he was reluctant, but when battling his father's killers, he accepted the offer and became Ghost Panther and battled Eric Killraven, a fusion of Eric Killmonger and Killraven, while riding a burning panther. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 2018's Infinity Wars, number 3.
Number 10. Carter Slade. The original Ghost Rider was actually referred to as the Phantom Rider. Carter Slade made his first comic book appearance in Ghost Rider 1 way back in 1967. Born in Ohio in the mid-19th century, Carter had aspirations to become a teacher, so he rode from Ohio to Montana. But during this commute, he was shot by guys dressed up as Native Americans. They were a bunch of white dudes, all of them canceled, immediately canceled. Comics are very dated now, so things like this happen and you're like, Okay, let's just see where the story goes. A doctor named Flaming Star took Carter after that point and prayed, he chanted, he did everything he could to save his life. Now the secret ingredient was glowing dust from a shooting star that he had from earlier and a special cape that he prepared. He saw the shooting star and knew that somebody important was going to come along. Okay, fair. Great call, Flaming Star. Also, great name. Carter's a pretty cool Ghost Rider. I mean, he carries with him these spirit guns, which are way more impressive than spirit fingers. Number 9, Johnny Blaze. Next on the list we have Johnny Blaze, another OG Ghost Rider. He made his first debut in Marvel Spotlight issue 5 in 1971, so 4 years after Carter Slade. Johnny began his mortal days as a stunt performer. He was great at handling a motorcycle, and Johnny became bound to Zarathos, the spirit of vengeance, after he made a deal with Mephisto to save his father, Crash Simpson's, life. You know, one of those classic scenarios we all get into. So now Johnny Blaze and his Hell Cycle control Hellfire and inflict it upon others that he deems evil with the help of his pendant stare. Nicolas Cage actually killed it as the Ghost Rider. I would not mind an older, crazier Nick Cage in the MCU. They can do it. Number 8, Caleb. Coming from Ghost Rider Trail of Tears issue 1, Caleb and his family were attacked one night and Caleb was killed by George Regan and his gang. Not a pleasant time at all, not a good origin. But then cut to 2 years later down the road, Caleb returns from the dead. Voila, how alarming. Brought back by some form of spirit of vengeance, in Trail of Tears issue 2, Caleb's friend Travis Parham returns and finds Caleb in his new ability to control corpses and travel through dimensions via Hellfire. So things have changed for them. The unlikely duo worked together tracking down other members of Regan's gang for, well, his death. They obviously wanted payback. Caleb is sick. He rides a flaming horse and he's got a chain. He's got bling, bonus points for some devil bling. Number 7, Robbie Reyes. Making his first appearance in all new Ghost Rider issue 1, Robbie was a young LA mechanic living in Hill Rock Heights. His area was full of gangs, so it wasn't exactly easy for him or his brother Gabriel. Now when Robbie heard of a street race offering the winner $50,000, he just had to compete. All that knowledge in cars, he's like, yo, I'm gonna smoke these fools. All that money too would get him and his brother out of there. So while he was winning, he was in first place during this race, he thought that cops were on his tail, so he booked it and eventually hit a dead end. He got out to explain and whatnot and say, hey, sorry, I'm doing a race trying to win some money, but then he realized they weren't in fact officers, but it was already too late. They opened fire on Robbie and he unfortunately did not survive. When the attackers went to burn the car, because evidence, they didn't realize that the car was possessed by a ghost and that ghost possessed Robbie, making him a new Ghost Rider. And of course he had to dish out some sweet payback. This guy's extremely powerful. I mean, in Avengers Volume 8, issue 25, Robbie uses his chain manifestation and it's so strong that it ripped a Celestial's arm right out of place. How wild is that? Number 6, Danny Ketch. Danny came around in comics nearly 20 years after Johnny Blaze in Ghost Rider Volume 3, issue 1. He was the son of Barton Blaze and Naomi Ketch. So when he was a teenager, Danny and his sister Barbara hit up a graveyard to get the real Halloween spooky vibe, let's do it, and also to take photos of Harry Houdini's grave. Those two things we always want to do on Halloween. While they were there, two gangs started to fight, one led by Deathwatch and the other with henchmen of Kingpin. So Barbara shrieked in fear as everything went down, naturally so. Deathwatch heard her, and then she was shot in the chest with an arrow, just horrible stuff. Danny grabbed her and took off. While he was catching his breath, figuring out what to do with his sister, he saw this beautiful motorbike with a glowing gas cap and touched it. He then became a Ghost Rider whose mission was to go after those who shed the blood of the innocent, such as his sister. Number 5, Alejandra Jones. Entering Marvel Comics in Ghost Rider Volume 7, Alejandra was born and trained alongside other orphans in a temple with one specific goal in mind. Why, to simply become one of the next Ghost Riders. Easy peasy. So when Johnny Blaze was convinced to give up the Ghost Rider curse, the Seeker was then resurrected to pick the next Ghost Rider. That's when Alejandra got her big break. She was first sent to Ohio to fight Scatty, the Red Skull's daughter. She lost, but still, she jumped right into the action. It was happening for her. She was a very powerful Ghost Rider nonetheless, but her reign came to an end once Johnny realized that he goofed up and he got his status back. After that point, she was upset. She swore revenge on Johnny, of course, because I'd be upset too if I had that power and then all of a sudden it was taken away from me because some other guy learned a lesson. I'd be like, great, I'm glad you're good. Can I still have that? Number 4, Ghost Rider 2099. Kenshiro Cochran made his first appearance in Ghost Rider 2099, issue 1, back in 1994. He was a hacker who rolled with a gang called the Hotwire Martyrs, residing in Transverse City. This gang was so badass, one day they stole encrypted data after hacking a fiber optic trunk line. Just as intense as a heist, for sure, just as badass. So while this was happening, in comes another gang, even more intimidating, called the Artificial Kids. The kids with a Z, of course, to make it cool. All these cool nerdy gangs. They actually killed everyone. It was indeed a massacre. It was very intense. No jokes this time. Kenshiro, street name Zero, decided to transfer the encrypted file to his girlfriend during this, and at the same time hack cyberspace to erase all his headwear implants. So Elon Musk's future is basically confirmed. We can look forward to that, nice. Then he wakes up in this new cyberspace called Ghostworks. Zero was sent back to the real world as their agent of change. The machines created a Cybertech 101 warbot, souped it up with nanotech weaponry, camo abilities, self-repair, and of course, a copy of Zero's personality downloaded into his neural net. Very futuristic, different version of Ghost Rider, but still counts. Number 3, Red Hulk Ghost Rider. In the Circle of 4 storyline, Captain America ordered General Ross to go after Venom, and while they went at it, Mephisto's kid, Blackheart, brought part of hell back up to Earth. Lovely. This all takes place in Venom Volume 2, Issue 12. And it's great timing because Red Hulk made an alliance with Venom, X-23, and Ghost Rider. They were all actually killed in this battle. And then in Hell, Mephisto did his thing and then offered the heroes another chance, all that devil stuff. And then all they had to do on their part was take down Blackheart. They got the spirit of vengeance and planned to get it to Johnny Blaze so he could become Ghost Rider again. So the Red Hulk at one point had the symbiote and the spirit. How intimidating is that? Number 2, Frank Castle, aka the Rider, coming from the pages of Thanos Volume 2, Issue 13, the Thanos wins storyline. So the Punisher actually died a pretty random way. A piece of debris from a building fell on him, and then he ended up in hell. Okay, that's one way to go. He was pretty eager for revenge, so he signed up a few contracts with Mephisto, became the last Ghost Rider, and then headed back to the battle. Only the thing was, when he returned, the dust had already settled long before. Thanos was gone, the planet was empty, it was a wasteland. The new Ghost Rider was quite bored for many, many years. Even Mephisto stopped answering his calls, and then he started losing his mind. Galactus then eventually came along, and Ghost Rider offered the dead planet in exchange for another go at Thanos. So they traveled the cosmos together. How fun, little duo. They found Thanos, Thanos cut Galactus' head off, and promised the Ghost Rider more evil than he could punish in 1,000 lifetimes, so Ghost Rider became his servant for a bit in the comics. Shaking hands with all the devils now, eh Frank? Okay. And finally, number 1, Ghost Spider. Coming from Earth 11638, aka the Perfect World, this Peter Parker has a much brighter beginning. Meaning Uncle Ben actually never passed away and gave the whole great responsibility speech. Instead, he just continues to encourage Peter to become a stronger Spider-Man as he gets older. A little pressure, okay, how does that affect this Peter Parker long term though? Where's the butterfly effect difference in this universe with Uncle Ben being alive? Well, Uncle Ben pushes Peter to abduct Spider-Man from other worlds and absorb their life force via this portal that Parker Technologies proudly created. Now eventually our Earth 616 Spider-Man shows up, they fight it out, our Earth 616 Peter Parker comes out on top with the amazing Spider getting his soul sucked into the machine. The perfect Spider-Man spirit was then trapped in the underworld, and then from here it only gets more strange. Literally, Banner at this time was the current Sorcerer Supreme. So he freed that Peter in his astral form, but Peter absorbed all these spirits of the damned while he was down there. So when he came back, he was now Ghost Spider. What a series of horrible but also cool events.